So far away, Lucas, what is your favourite adaptation of an anime?
Ooh, of an anime.
There's not many, is there? Actually, no. There's not many good ones.
No, and it's maybe my favourite just because there's bad ones a lot of the time, is like One Piece did an alright job.
The highest praise you can offer is, it was alright. Like, you've got to give the rising inflection, and you're like,
Yeah,
it's alright. Could be a lot worse. Like,
could be Cowboy Bebop.
Oh man, the only thing I've seen of Cowboy Bebop, the live action one, is, hey, let's introduce. Did you see the last bit? They introduced that character.
You spy, cowboy, bounty hunter for hire. Wake up! I have a job for you.
You probably won't surprise anybody watching this to learn that Hollywood is like a teensy bit racist. And we've actually talked before on the channel about how racist Hollywood has been, in particular to Asian people. For example, we talked about the Japanese actor who was so sexy that Hollywood basically blacklisted him because white women did not know how to deal with him. And you weren't here for that one, Lucas. Are you familiar with Sesue Hayakawa?
No, I'm definitely not. I have no idea about this at all.
So a quick Cliff Notes version of that video is that Sesue Hayakawa was just this Japanese actor who was really, really handsome. But he was famous and handsome in a time period where it was literally against the law to have Asian actors get with white women. Which was weird because his primary audience was white women who would go to his showings of his movies and scream and faint in the audience, like wanting to fuck him. And you're thinking, was he really that handsome? I've sent you a picture on Discord, Lucas. Look at this man.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. And
that is a suave-looking man.
But he couldn't get the girl in any movie that he was in, even though his entire audience was white women who wanted to fuck him because it was literally against the rules to have a white woman kiss an Asian guy in film.
Yeah.
That was a real thing that you couldn't do in movies. Like, there was literally rules against showing that in a movie. That's how racist Hollywood used to be. We've also talked about how current internet darling Ke-Huy Quan couldn't get a role in Hollywood for well over a decade and just quit acting because every role he got offered as an Asian guy was racist or demeaning. But today's story is so bizarre and so racist, Hollywood itself has tried to distance itself from it. That time they tried to use CGI to make Scarlett Johansson look more Asian. Allegedly. So we have to say allegedly here, so before we continue, we should note that all the parties involved have heavily denied that this took place, for reasons that will become abundantly clear, we hope. That's the thing, we have to say we hope, because probably someone out there's like, why is it a big deal? And it's like, oh no.
Yeah, and it's one of those just legal things of like, we have to say allegedly, we cannot like legally confirm that this 100% happened, because, you know, we could be liable in court.
Scarlett Johansson, despite being like, you know, the thrust of the video's narrative and probably the person in the thumbnail for this video, claims to have had no idea what was going on, although she didn't really help matters when she put her foot all the way into her mouth, when she's like, well, it's my right as an actor to play any race that I want, which she then immediately walked back.
Yeah, that was the thing where she's like, well, I could be anything, I could be a tree.
And she walked that the fuck back because, like, then her name started appearing on lists of actors who played, like, Asian characters. And when your face is coming up next to Mr. Yonoshi, Lucas, scroll down and look at Mickey Rooney as Mr. Yonoshi.
No.
Scroll down a bit. Look at him. Look at that. Look at that.
Breakfast at Tiffany's. Why?
Look at that. Look at Mr. Yonoshi. Doesn't he look great? Look at Mickey Rooney. He's great.
Well, he was heavily lauded at the time.
Yeah,
Great,
New York Times. The New York Times. Luke's going to put in a clip in of Mr. Yonoshi, played by white guy Mickey Rooney.
You cannot go on or keep ringing my bell. You disturb me. You must have a key made.
Now, you've seen the clip, right, folks? The New York Times described that performance as broadly exotic.
I don't want to have to watch
in a positive sense.
No.
You don't, but you're going to have to put it in. And so Scarlett Johansson walked back her comments because she realised, oh shit, yeah, this is like kind of fucked up. Like, you know, we mentioned those stories earlier. Like, from the earliest days of Hollywood, there was like a really handsome, successful Asian actor who literally could not lead movies because there were laws in place to prevent him fucking white women. Even though all he did in his free time was fuck white women. And all that his audience was white women. It's like Hollywood is so racist. But they've denied it happened. The places that reported on it, including Screen Crush, to give them their credit, have stood by the veracity of their insider sources. Not to mention as well, I'm really hesitant to give Hollywood the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's not like there's some kind of pattern of this happening over many, many decades.
That some of which we've talked about before. But, like, specifically, today's story concerns the casting of Johansson as the lead in Ghost in the Shell. And if anyone unfamiliar with the source material of Ghost in the Shell, and wondering, well, why would anyone care, that Scarlett Johansson was hired to play the lead character in an adaptation of this anime. Consider the name of the titular character in Ghost of the Shell of Motoko Kusanagi.
ロックが突入準備を完了したぜ。少佐。
聞こえてる。
And, in fairness to Hollywood, and in fairness to, anyone making an adaptation of another piece of media, it's an adaptation. Things can change in the translation from, book to screen, from screen to book, from screen to smaller screen, from screen to screen when you're making, a remake of an older property. You don't want it to be one-to-one because then you just watch the old thing, right?
What's the point of adapting it?
Yeah, of course, things can be changed, and some things can arguably need to be changed because, different mediums, have different requirements, and some things can be changed just to suit the sensibilities at the time, or if the creative lead behind it has a different vision for what the property can be. And there's been some good examples of that, and there's been some real bad examples of that.
Yeah, and there's so many as well where I can think of anime adaptations where just all of a sudden these characters are Japanese, it's set in Japan, and all of a sudden it's some random American kid playing the role of the high school.
Let's talk. Are you talking about Dragon Ball, Lucas?
Goku. Yeah, what?
Yeah, there's multiple, many different anime adaptations where that happens, but yeah, it's just... Why did they not... could they not have been Japanese? It's well, they could have been, but, we don't think that people on Netflix are going to watch it as much if it's got, a Japanese person in the role of a Japanese character.
Yeah.
It's fuck off.
We don't think people will watch it if it had an Asian lead. And it's Netflix saying that, and then you go look at, what was the most popular thing released last year? Squid Game. And what was it? Majorly watched it? Oh, native Korean. To the point where people were moaning that it would start in the English dub, which was fucking terrible, rather than native.
It's so bad.
It's almost like people just want good, interesting stories. And before we move on, I think the best response to the Dragon Ball live action movie and the terrible casting choices is when Screen Junkies did the honest trailer and got the guys from Team 4-Star to do the review in character as Goku and Vegeta and Piccolo. And when the guy playing Goku comes on screen, Piccolo's is that Goku? He's wait, Goku, I don't think you're white.
That's Goku.
Well, this is an outrage. I never went to school.
Also, I don't think you're white.
Oh god, at least to be fair, they made Piccolo green still.
Yeah, they make Piccolo green. And bringing it back to Ghost in the Shell, the producers were basically laid up with the easiest excuse for changing the race of the main character possible, in that the Major isn't a person. They are a robotic shell in which a human consciousness is stored. If that wasn't clear from the title, Ghost in the Shell. So, realistically, the shell can look like anything.
Yeah, so they could have made it an American woman, and that's what the robot is based on. The robot is based on a Scarlett Johansson looking American lady.
There is no reason that shell has to look Asian. And as mentioned, a film doesn't need to be a one-to-one adaptation. If they just said, okay, the Major in this looks like Scarlett Johansson, it's not Motoko Kusanagi anymore, but that doesn't really matter. It's what matters is the Major's characterization, which is true to the original. That would have been fine, but they couldn't leave well enough alone. And midway through the film, they dropped the Major. Oh no, who's the soul inside of my robotic shell? Oh, that's an Asian lady called Motoko Kusanagi. And it's oh no! They had an inbuilt excuse to change the race of the main character, and then still said, but actually, no, they're actually an Asian woman locked inside Scarlett Johansson's body, which is somehow weirdly more racist.
It's like doubling down on the whitewashing, isn't it?
That's the thing. They could have gotten away with it by just saying, like, because that's the thing as well. They don't call the character Motoko Kusanagi. They call the Major.
Yeah.
They could have just looked like anybody. And that's the thing. And the robot shell can look like anyone. That's the point of the fucking original manga.
And yet they had to do it.
They had that's the thing, Lucas, they had. Like, they were given the softest layup possible to just completely deflect any criticism. And they still fucked it up. And it reminds me a little bit of, like, every couple of years, like, the thing that goes around is that amazing. And I say amazing in the sense, like, it's amazing that it exists, was created and that it was defended by people in Hollywood for years. And that is the now legendary pitch for an Akira remake. And for the young naive souls out there who have no idea what I'm talking about, Hollywood had literally spent decades trying to adapt or remake Akira, but make it American. Even though Akira is set in Neo Tokyo. It's set in double Japan Tokyo.
That's fine. I can be America, right?
Yeah.
Tokyo can be American.
And just every now and again you go look up, like, just the work pitch they were doing where they're like, oh, who should be Akira? It's like, oh, this Ethan Hawke guy looks like he'd be a good Akira.
Oh, no.
So he's called Akira. It's like, oh, who should we get to play Tetsuo? Oh, I don't know. This fucking Tom Cruise dude looks alright. What? That's it. I'm just going to now go through, like, the main characters of it. Like, I'm going to look at Akira. American remake. Because I want to know what are the actors they were trying to do. Here we go.
They were pitching,
we're going to do a mini episode of Wiki Weekends, Lucas. Let's do a mini episode of Wiki Weekends.
Okay.
Akira is a proposed American cyberpunk action film based on the Japanese manga of the same name by Katsuhiro Otomo and was set to be the second film adaptation following the legendary 1988 anime version. The film was set to be directed by Taika Waititi.
No.
Warner Bros. Have held the rights to a live-action version of the manga since 2002 and has repeatedly struggled to get production off the ground, leaving the project in development hell. So it's been in development hell for literally 2 decades.
Maybe it's just fucking stay there.
So IGN conclude that long-term troubles with producing a live-action film primarily came from 2 areas. Firstly, there's been a fear of whitewashing and race bending. Casting American or other Western actors in lieu of Japanese ones has frequently come to light when such actors have been reported as being under consideration for the roles. Secondly, Akira, unlike many stories which can be adapted and changed, is difficult to relocate outside of Japan due to heavy influence on the original story of Japan's role in World War II, including the atomic bombings of Japan and their own Unit 731. Making it more westernized in order to draw an American audience, using things like the September 11th attacks as part of the establishing events to the atomic bombings required fundamental changes to the story, which has frequently drawn criticism, and that's the problem. Like, we talk about you can adapt stuff, but when you're adapting something, you need to keep the spirit of the thing alive, but you can change pretty much everything else. Like, the movie is so quintessentially Japanese. It's so rooted in, like, Japan's history. You can change some elements of it, but that needs to stay the same. And here we go. So we've got casting here. So several actors have been considered for principal roles throughout the development. Andrew Garfield, Robert Pattinson, and Michael Fassbender were met with for the role of Tetsuo. That's the thing. Just that sentence should tell you it's a bad fucking idea. Actors considered for the role of Kaneda were Chris Pine, Justin Timberlake, and Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh,
Just that sentence alone. And here it is. Joaquin Phoenix in his greatest role since Commodus and Napoleon. Kaneda.
Did you hear that thing about the casting of Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon?
Oh, yeah, and, like, actual historians were yelling at Ridley Scott and he's like, shut the fuck up.
Well, no, apparently that Ridley Scott got, like, an epiphany for him as, like, the role. And
did he cover up his eye?
He like, put the hat on top of a picture of Joaquin Phoenix and was, like, perfect.
Getting back to the story of, like, Ghost in the Shell. Following the backlash, it's rumoured that Paramount Pictures toyed with the idea of using CGI to make Scarlett Johansson look more Asian-y. And I'm not going to say what they did, Lucas, because it's real fucking bad. But you can probably imagine what they try to do, right?
I can only imagine how weird and racist the ideas that they had were.
Yeah, and most of the CGI work was focused around the eyes.
Oh, like, again, I'm just like going back to like the fucking breakfast at Tiffany's clip in my brain. Like, why?
Once again,
why?
Paramount Pictures have heavily denied that this took place. However, like sites like Screen Crush do stand by the veracity and the accuracy of their insider information. And all the insiders spoke under the condition of anonymity because, exactly what it would have involved is not clear. And Paramount would only, after a lot of prodding, admit to using CGI as a test for changing the look of a background actor to better suit the tone of the film. And that's like a very corporate way of putting they used CGI to try and make a background extra look more Asian.
Well, allegedly.
Allegedly. And the reason like people have inferred it to mean this is because this isn't exactly something Hollywood has like avoided doing in the past. For example, for the live action remake of Aladdin, when they were filming that, Disney literally put out casting calls for people who kind of looked vaguely ethnic for background extras. And then when they couldn't find enough brown people to be in the background of their shot, they literally just started painting white extras brown.
Yeah, and then
Disney admitted to doing
they
this.
couldn't find enough people with that complexion.
That's the thing.
To appear in the background as an extra. It's like, shut the fuck up.
And here's the thing, like, Disney literally admitted to doing this. And when they were asked, like, why they did it, we couldn't find enough people who had the complexion required to make up the scene, so we're forced to use special effects to realize that. And when you realize that's Disney saying we literally could not find enough brown people to fill out the background of a shot, and it's like, that's you're saying a lot with that statement, and it's probably not saying what you think it says.
No, it's saying that you didn't try, what it's saying. But they think, no, if we just say it's impossible, we couldn't find anyone. It's like, do you know how many people are on planet Earth? Like, there's enough people you could find.
It reminds me a little bit of, like, we mentioned Wiki Weekends earlier. I think we were doing like a live recording of one of the Wiki Weekends. I think it's now its own channel. You can go follow that. The link's found below. And we were talking about, like, it was The Martian, where there's an Asian character in The Martian that they just hired a white person to play. And I remember someone in chat just said, well, maybe they couldn't find an Asian person to play the role. It's like, that's still really bad. That's not a defense for doing it.
There's a lot of Asian people. It's not gonna be that hard if you actually try.
Well, that's the thing, but the fact that they thought, oh, maybe they couldn't find someone to play, it's like, well, that's still bad. That means there's no Asian people being given a chance. Like, we talk like K.Q. Kwan, where he quit acting because there was no opportunities for him.
It's such a fucking nasty thing of, like, they've been bullied out of the industry, and then Disney complain that, like, they can't find enough people.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe that is because you weren't fucking giving any of them jobs.
Yeah, and then, again, we have to reiterate that Paramount Pictures have heavily denied that this took place. But the story is just too funny. And this is, like, actual dark humor, not just dark when people just want to be racist or whatever. Like, that Hollywood wanted to adapt a piece of Japanese media, but then couldn't find a Japanese person, or didn't want to put a Japanese person in, like, the lead role. And then when they got backlash, rightfully so, for not casting someone in that role, allegedly toyed with the idea of just using CGI to make their actress look more Asian, rather than just hiring an Asian. The fact that that was their thought process, and you know it was, because it's happened before.
Yeah, like, there is a massive history of this happening throughout Hollywood and productions and stuff, and it's like, just the idea that they didn't want to use a Japanese actor in the first place.
It didn't occur to them. They only allegedly toyed with the idea of using CGI to make Scarlett Johansson look more Asian after the trailer came out. And the response to the trailer was, well, why have you got a white lady playing a character called, like, the most Japanese sounding name possible? And the producers were apparently shocked at this feedback. They didn't think people would be bothered by it, because obviously it never occurred to them that it was a bad thing.
For years, they've gotten away with just hiring white people in Asian roles.
Well, that's the thing, and that's what's so funny about it, that they spent $100 million making a movie, and it's only after they released the trailer and people were like, what? And there's probably someone going to mention that they did interview some people involved, like the original anime and manga, and they were, like, kind of okay with it because they saw, well, it's a Hollywood thing. They're probably going to cast a Hollywood actress in there, but that still doesn't discount that there were still, like, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Asian people who were really pissed off with the idea of this cultural like export, this famed cultural export, not showcasing people from that culture. And that's the weird thing, though, because like you watch the movie and you watch the trailers and stuff like that, they lean really heavily into that like Neo Tokyo cyberpunk aesthetic. It's like they're happy to borrow the aesthetic, the culture, the cultural exports of a region of the world, but we're not going to cast people from there. And it's so fucking funny, because I do not believe for 1 second that they didn't at the very least think about doing this.
Yeah, and I don't believe for 1 second that they wouldn't have been able to hire Japanese people to play the roles.
It's just so fucking... It's one of those things, it's so dumb, but you just have to laugh, because, yeah, that sounds about right. It's like when like, you hear about, oh, do you know when they were making Aladdin, Disney painted people brown and then released a statement because they didn't see an issue with it, and it was only after people pointed out how fucked up it was. Because their defense was, we couldn't find enough people with like a darker complexion to work in the background. So we had to paint white people brown.
Yeah, could you not have just had a few less people in the background?
Yeah.
Did you really have to result of painting people?
They never... And that's the thing, is they released a statement because they didn't think it was a bad thing.
They thought they could get away with it because it was in the background.
And it's just so funny. Again, like, darkly hilarious, that, you know, and thankfully we're moving past that. And it's very funny to see people, like, get annoyed by it.
See, yeah, that's the thing, is at least we are at a point where, like, people are having backlash against, like, the casting of Scarlett Johansson, what Disney did with Aladdin. Like, at least we are now at a point where enough people are vocal about it being a problem.
As I said, like, you know, adaptations can change things. If you are going to change things, just change them, like, you know, more. Like, if they wanted to make...
As we said earlier, like, they literally had an inbuilt excuse to be like, yes, an American robot.
They could have even had a cameo from a character called, like, they could have had, like, some lady. And it's like, oh, like, that's Motoko Kusanagi. And it's like, oh, yeah, you know, that's the name of the original character there. Little cameo here or something like that, and they didn't do that. Instead, they make Scarlett Johansson just like, oh, do you know you actually were Asian, but now we made you into a hot white lady, which is better? What?
Yeah, God, it's so gross.
It's so weird and gross. That's it. The only way to describe it is, it's funny, because if you didn't laugh, you'd cry.